Where could you go to find a detective novel, a nail, a loaf of bread, shoes, meat, baby clothes, a toaster, a packet of seeds, a newspaper or stationery? Growing up, we understood these things to be found in different kinds of shops, sold under the auspices of different trades: the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. Irish towns and villages have developed and thrived over centuries based upon the development of trade, which evolved into more complex commerce and service industries. The inheritance of a millennium of trading and commercial activity in a city like Cork is obliterated when we can find all of the aforementioned items and more in a single retail unit just over 2 miles from the city centre. In this paper, I argue that our urban history and heritage must be understood to include use, both in town centres and as a whole and in individual buildings. The economic activities of towns, and in particular their retail diversity and history, are a matter of cultural heritage and association as much as the physical fabric of individual buildings. Much has been achieved in understanding the character of our historic towns and areas by means of appraisal, designation, policy and grant support. However, as part of a globalised economy in deep recession, vacancy has become an increasingly common feature of our town centres, along with the loss of traditional and independent retailers. This may well present an opportunity in terms of finding integrated solutions to this multifaceted problem. It may also mean that we approach conserving our built heritage from a different angle, one which emphasises the need to support building uses and users over or as much as building envelope or fabric features. It is entirely possible that the objectives of architectural conservation would be achieved as a natural outcome of such a process. In order to illustrate how different towns in the same region have different experiences in terms of the vibrancy of their historic town centres, I have compared 4 towns in Kerry and Cork: Listowel, Clonakilty, Killarney and Tralee. I propose to consider vacancy, development plan policy on built heritage designation and retail, the nature of economic activity and population. Some suggestions for a way forward are developed based upon this cursory survey and upon consultations with other parties. What is our built heritage asset? Irish towns are not the repositories of Renaissance palazzos, timber-framed houses or great cathedrals. They are enjoyed and visited for different reasons. The built heritage asset of Irish towns and villages is their scale, landscape setting and street pattern. The general building stock is 2, 3 and 4 stories high. The skyline is defined by the line or lines and junctions of slate roofs, generally at an A pitch, punctured by landmarks, open spaces, monuments and steeples. It is the scale and intimacy of the traditional town and village which is attractive to visitor and resident alike. It is also the authenticity of a community carrying out the range of social and economic activities within those spaces which is of interest. The fronts of pubs, shops, offices and restaurants are the physical manifestation of the town's current and traditional activities. How do we understand, identify and protect the character of the built heritage asset? The statutory requirements of the Planning Act have done much to bring us towards a better understanding of the character of our built heritage. The appraisal and identification involved in the designation of architectural conservation areas affords us the opportunity to understand the character of an area within a town or village by placing value on groups of buildings and the quality of their assemblage in one area, as opposed to considering an individual building for record of protected structure status. In following up designation with management and policy objectives, an integrated approach to a wide range of issues, including land use, public realm and services, may be taken. The ACA is useful, therefore, to identify character and that which may be unique or special, but particularly if it can be incorporated into local initiatives for regeneration, environmental improvements and tourism. It can be an important starting point and an opportunity for management of the built heritage asset as part of broader objectives towards the health of an area. I argue that we need to do still more than this in the current climate. So what the evidence on the ground indicates. I visited the 4 towns to assess the impact of the recession on town centre vibrancy, with particular reference to retail vacancies. On site, I completed a cursory survey of the number of vacancies in the principal street or streets of a town, and that excluded historic vacancies. That would be change of use from pub to residential, which you're probably familiar with, the presence of independent retailers, the presence of out-of-town retail centres, and the occurrence of original historic shop frontages. Off-site, I compared development plans under the headings of retail strategy, built heritage, and major policy objectives according to the specialisation of the town and population data. Listowel is one of 15 heritage towns in Ireland, 2 of which you'll be hearing from later. Listowel Writers' Week and Listowel Race Week are synonymous with the town. The population of Listowel is 4,200, with an urban extension of another 20. It is a market town with equal employment in manufacturing, commerce and services. The Town Development Plan 2009-15 recognises the heritage value of the town and its tourism potential. This forms the context to many policies, including retail. The record of protected structures has 97 entries and 9 ACAs are designated in the town. In terms of its retail strategy, it is an objective to improve the town's retail attraction, maintain the primacy of the town centre, and use the tourism, sporting and artistic strengths of Listowel to support this. On site, it was found that there were less than 10 premises to let, that there remains a great vitality in the town with all kinds of small shops, many of which retain their original fronts. The majority were independent retailers with names associated with the area. One supermarket exists on the edge of the town. Listowel is striking for the number of pubs and the plasterwork decoration common on many buildings, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. Next up was Tralee, which has a population of close to 21,000 with another rural population of 30,000. Nearly 3/4 of the workforce are employed in administration, services and sales, with less than 1/4 in manufacturing. As the county town of County Kerry, Tralee features fine terraces, a planned street and square, as well as landmark buildings. Part of its character has always been as a retail hub, not just for Kerry but parts of Cork and Limerick also. Tourism has featured strongly in the town's past with the Rose of Tralee Festival and the development of other attractions more recently. The town plan recognises the need to promote the town's existing environmental and heritage assets. The plan has nearly 340 listings on the record of protected structures and considers 7 areas within the town to merit ACA designation. In the late 1990s, a retail park was developed 2.8 kilometres outside the town centre, which has acted as a regional draw for retail in the area. The current plan acknowledges that despite the objective of the 2003 plan to maintain the vibrancy of the town and support its traditional retail role as the centre of social and business interaction, practical issues such as the demand for surface car parking and larger sized retail units has resulted in increased decentralisation from the town centre to the suburbs. The retail policy objectives of the current plan are comprehensive and aim to improve and enhance the environment of the retail core, i.e. the town centre. On site, it was found that there were approximately 50 retail units that were vacant or closed on and off the town's 6 main thoroughfares. There were very few original shop fronts in the town, and this is probably as a victim of its own success. A busy retail town like that would have changed in the 1960s to plastic and changed again, let's say, to pastiche timber in the 80s and 90s. Modern shopping centre and lane redevelopments featured further vacancies and were worse affected. Included in the vacancies were former stationers, former children's clothes shop, butchers, travel agents, toy shop, building society and supermarket chain. As you can imagine, the reasons for the vacancy differ. Some could not compete with the larger out-of-town competitors in their speciality. Online shopping affected others, and global market changes damaged others still. You can just see there on the top left-hand corner the logo for Manor West Retail Park. It says Tralee starts here, which is, I suppose, ironic in the context of this discussion. You can also see how nodal points in the town, such as the entrance to the main square, has 2 vacant buildings, 2 corner buildings facing each other, and opposite the the landmark parish church are vacant, and that's that fine building down in the right-hand corner is a Dunnes Stores that's now vacant. The presence of so many vacant shops and the replacement of others with discount or €2 stores is alarming and very poor for consumer confidence in the town. What was clearly a draw to the town has backfired in the recession as the centre suffers, which in turn may detract from the image of the town. Looking at Killarney, which has a population of 13,030 in its rural area, it is one of Ireland's foremost tourist destinations, and its town plan reflects the importance of the industry to the town. That photo is actually taken from the cover of the town plan. Tourism is the key economic driver, and this is underpinned by an acknowledgement of the need to protect its natural and built heritage resources in many of the plan's policy objectives. 68 buildings are included in the record of protected structures, and it is an objective of the plan to designate ACAs during its lifetime. The plan does allow for the balancing of development requirements with the need to protect heritage resources. On site, there were just over 10 vacancies. 8 were located in new shopping centres and new street developments. One included the landmark former Town Hall building on Main Street, which you can see there on the top left. A number of independent retailers remain in the town, excuse me, again featuring local and regional names. You can see there that's a 1970s shop front to an off-licence, but it features O'Shea, and it's not part of a chain. I suppose I was just making that point. And O'Leary as well as a local name, and a bakery there and a sweet shop. Interestingly, convenience retail is located more on the outskirts of the town at College Street and Beach Street. The town features a high number of restaurants and hotels along its historic streets. A number of hotels had notices to say that they were only opened at the weekend, which is indicative of the seasonal nature of tourism and the current recession. Killarney has quite a few traditional shop fronts with independent retailers still based in them. No doubt the capital of historic detail in the built environment is understood, for its tourism values. Both Killarney and Tralee suffer from what I would call fractured spaces. These are larger new developments within or at the edge of the town centre, often including higher buildings with basic or poor finishes and extensive surface car parking that is not landscaped. In these developments, the service aspect of the rear of buildings on other streets tends to feature prominently. And as well as that, you can see in Killarney how the tourism industry and, say, the requirements of the hotel industry, you can end up with a kind of a mix, an architectural mix such as this on the otherwise very traditional, modest-scaled street. It doesn't quite fit in. Clonakilty was the 4th town which was visited. It has a population of nearly 4,000 and is synonymous with environmental improvements and initiatives over the past 20 to 25 years. To many, Clonakilty is the model for how community, business and local authority partnerships can work together to bring about massive environmental and economic improvement to a small town. The economic vitality of this town is traced back to such initiatives, which may in the first instance have begun as a Tidy Towns project. The town plan places the environmental excellence and heritage character of the town as the starting point for many policy objectives, including maintaining the vitality of the town centre. 207 buildings are listed in the record of protected structures. The pristine condition of buildings, and therefore the lack of dereliction, along with the existence of a significant number of original shop fronts and wide variety of retail and entertainment in the town, is striking. On site, approximately 12 units were vacant, including one large premises on the main street and one on a prominent corner. The visual impact, however, was reduced due to the consistently good condition of other buildings in the town. From an architectural conservation principle, there are problems with legibility resulting from the phenomenon of replication of both shop fronts and pastiche building, which are a downside of this approach, which is probably down to the date at which it might have started, late 80s, early 90s. The comparison and survey of the 4 towns highlighted the following. The historic town core is an asset for retail and entertainment alike, providing an intimate and attractive environment to be in. The strengths of a town could also be its weaknesses. In the case of Killarney, tourism provides for the appreciation of the original planned town and the remaining original shopfronts and buildings. However, it also causes pressure to meet capacity for car parking and new build in a way which can detract from the identity of the town and its true form. In the case of Tralee, the traditional retail draw of the town, which was expanded and developed during the boom outside the town, is now threatening the vibrancy of its historic centre, as the boom to bust of the last decade causes severe contraction and town centre business. In this regard, the objectives of development plan policy are arguably too aspirational and somewhat after the event. In other words, could have foreseen the economic growth of the past decades 5 years before it started, or equally the bust? Authorities may or may not underpin their core strategies with a recognition of the need to protect a town's heritage assets. This understanding may or may not be incorporated into requirements for retail strategies and other objectives which can ultimately be formulaic. Finally, the smaller scale of towns like Listowel and Clonakilty may better place them to initiate partnerships and drives towards regeneration and improvement. It was also clear that their size contributed to the retention of original building stock and detail as well as traditional retailers. And incidentally, they all do well in the Tidy Towns competition. I just want to touch briefly on when I was doing some research for this presentation, I spoke to Niall O'Donovan, an executive planner with Cork City Council, and we talked about Cork. He advised me the state of affairs in Cork City in relation to office vacancy, which I think is quite interesting. In the past year, the City Council has placed a major focus on the problem of city centre vacancy and dereliction, which included the completion of a significant visual derelict site survey. The survey looked at ground floor vacancies, unsightliness and dereliction on that scale. The highest concentrations correlated with the most historic streets of the city, including Barrack Street and Shandon Street, the former of which has proven resistant to urban renewal initiatives. Niall advised that the City Council, there is not only an issue of loss of retail vibrancy in the city, but also of office use. 4 major out-of-town retail centres were developed in the last 20 years in Cork, all with a major supermarket anchor complemented by a range of other retail and entertainment choices and office space. There is currently 20% office vacancy in the city. South Mall, the traditional business street, has a similar vacancy rate, while 42% of the street is protected. One single office development in the new Mahon area can provide the equivalent of the entire city centre office accommodation and the car parking facilities of 1.5 multi-storey car parks. This presents a serious threat to the long-term future of the city's historic building stock, remembering that it has a far more limited tolerance of vacancy than new build. Furthermore, in losing office uses, the city loses a multiplier effect into the local economy as spin-offs in catering, entertainment and retail go to the outskirts of the city, where the multiplier effect is greatly diminished. The opportunity now presents itself to take an integrated approach to the problem of office vacancy. Niall has suggested that this may take the form of a pilot study area where a multi-pronged approach would consider the physical condition of the building, the telecommunications and other business upgrades required, along with potential discounted rates and a negotiation with landlords to bring down the standard rents. This could be an active role coordinated by the planning authority, involving stakeholders, bringing a building back to the market and instilling some goodwill as far as owners and users are concerned, whose capital is ultimately on the line. In such a scenario, the heritage building of itself will not drive the economy, but the management of the resource and the support offered to business may ensure long-term conservation and stimulate sustainable economic growth. I spoke as well to a marketing manager of the Botanic Inns. It's a chain of pubs in Belfast, and 2 of the pubs are listed. Linda Rogers, she reflected this idea that we need to come up with new and different solutions. You can't wish for independent retailers to come back into town, and even if you have a listed pub, which is the oldest in Belfast, it's not good enough to keep your sales up and to keep the building maintained. You have to be constantly finding new ways of bringing people into your premises. So in conclusion, it is clear that different scenarios apply to different towns and urban centres. Each town must play to its strengths. It would appear that smaller towns are better placed to coordinate a comprehensive town strategy that involves partnership between local town management, business interests and communities. This is a slow process that may take years of negotiation and may start with the smallest of events that build a momentum. The role of the built heritage in this process is that it can form the basis for such actions. It is an asset which may or may not be understood, but which can be identified. It can contribute to a story of rebuilding confidence in areas where economic misfortunes can be felt on the streets of a town. Our definition of the built heritage must be extended to include the use of the building, and policies must be integrated to reflect an understanding that the user of the building should also be supported. I'd just like to conclude with one of the retailers. It's not a listed building and doesn't have particularly historic fabric in Tralee. It's called Small Benners, well, to people from Tralee. The proprietor is Mr. Kevin Benner, and that's his son with him there. He featured on a programme called On the Street Where You Live, which some of you may have seen. I did meet one person in Tralee who said that Mr. Benner had actually served 5 generations of her family. So that's a pretty impressive inheritance and heritage that is as valid, perhaps, well, I think definitely as a historic building. It's something we need to protect. Thank you very much.